Hello and welcome to Fulfillment Therapy. My name is Maddie, Kendra Nilsson's COO, and today we'll be listening to episode 252, Navigating Meltdowns, How Parents Can Foster Emotional Intelligence in Children with Alyssa Campbell. We hope you enjoy.
Welcome back to Fulfillment Therapy. Today we have a special guest, Alyssa Campbell. She's an emotional intelligence researcher and founder of SEED with a background in early childhood education. She focuses on changing adult responses to children's emotions. In her 2023 book, Tiny Humans, Big Emotions, she guides parents in fostering emotional intelligence in children, addressing issues like tantrums and defiance. Thank you so much for coming on the show today, Alyssa. Yeah. So we heard a little bit about your bio, but tell us a little bit about you and the things that you love.
Totally. I love tiny humans, to be honest. I really just like people. I like being in relationship with people. When I was younger, my mom had asked me what I wanted to be when I grew up. And my answer is that I either wanted to be a cashier or a waitress because I just wanted to connect with different people every day. I really love the kind of psychology and neuroscience around what makes us individually tick, right? I'm a mom and I have two kids and I birthed two totally different humans. And my husband and I are so different in how we navigate the world and interpret the world. And I'm just fascinated by all that jazz. Like, what's happening inside of us that leads to those differences and then also those similarities?
I can definitely relate to that. It seems like my curiosity is sometimes insatiable. Sometimes it would go away, but I love that I'm not the only one in that. Do you mind starting off today with sharing a personal story that maybe inspired you when it comes to your journey into emotional intelligence with children, especially?
Yeah, for sure. So I'm one of five kids. I'm from like rural Western New York, farm town land. And I have two really rad parents. They got pregnant at 19 and started a family. And I have four brothers. Finances were tight. We don't come from money. They didn't come from money. And my mom chose to be a stay-at-home mom, and then she would waitress nights and weekends and work to just put food on the table and kind of make ends meet. My dad worked jobs similarly just to provide for the family. And they are incredible humans. And there were things that I came to teenage years and into adulthood not having toolboxes for. And I experienced sexual assault when I was 14. And after that, just was treading water to stay afloat. I was in a really tough place, turning to coping mechanism after coping mechanism. They would find cigarettes in my purse. They would find me at a party, just like we're really trying to stay afloat. At the same time, I was like a star athlete and a straight A student and president of student council and trying everything to do the right thing, to be enough, to feel like I was enough. And then I made it through college and I got out and I was trying to figure out what I wanted to do. I thought I wanted to go into education policy. And I found myself working in a childcare program as a stopgap to figuring out what I really wanted to do. And I was working at this center where every head teacher had to have a master's or be on a master's track. I was exposed to so many rad teaching practices and realized, oh, this is fascinating to me. And then as I got into early ed, I ended up getting a master's in early ed. I realized that so many of the skills I was trying to teach kids, I didn't have. Like I was supposed to teach them about coping. I didn't have coping strategies. I was supposed to support kids in moving through anxiety. And I was living with anxiety. And so a lot of this, I'd sit in workshops and, oh, this makes sense. Yep, totally. And then I get into practice with the kids. And now a 2-year-old throws a block at me and I want to internally fight a 2-year-old. And so I'd find myself in this space where like, now I want to fight a 2-year-old. And when I say that out loud, it sounds bonkers, right? The idea of wanting to fight a 2-year-old is insane. And it's so real that we get into these spaces where we're in reactive cycles based off of our own triggers and our own biases and our own social programming and whatever tools we do or don't have. A lot of what I was exposed to in my master's was around like behavior management and classroom management and helping build social skills. How do we help kids be kind to each other? How do we help them sit in the classroom? How do we help them walk quietly in the hallway? How do we help them share? How do we help them show up as social beings? And what we know is that you can't do that without a foundational skill set for emotional intelligence of what happens for me before the social piece? How do I build awareness of my own internal reactions? What do I do with that once I have the awareness? How do I regulate? And how do I process experiences so that I can show up in relationship with others? Long answer there. I just found myself trying to teach things I didn't have and had gone through a whole master's degree on how to teach this and realized like we can't actually teach it until we have it too. And that even within the master's, it was so focused on social and not emotional development.
And it's a very uncomfortable space where you're in this situation, whether it's in parenting or a job, where you're presented with these situations where you need to respond a certain way, especially if you want it to be an adaptive, healthy response, and feeling like you're a little bit lost or even hypocritical, like you're winging it. And I do still feel that way a lot in parenting, but really wanting to explore more of that emotional intelligence, have the tools for things like anxiety, for coping, emotional regulation, those types of things, so that you could really help others in a way that you couldn't even really help yourself yet.
That's exactly it. And you can't help others if you can't do it for yourself.
What about when it comes to parents and they want to do maybe the same thing that you're talking about, improving their own emotional regulation? Maybe it's anxiety or coping. How do they do that when they're faced with their kids' tantrums? I know you said that you love emotional intelligence. Is there some tips you can give us when it comes to that?
Yeah, absolutely. First of all, recognizing that so my daughter Mila the other day like had a full belly laugh. It was just like that full deep belly laugh of a 1-year-old. It's the most delicious sound. It's so contagious. All of us
Mhm.
around her like smiling, laughing. And it's because feelings are contagious. When her nervous system is feeling that amount of joy and excitement and happiness, it produces oxytocin, which is that feel good love hormone. And then my body mirrors that. I start to produce that oxytocin. And now I have that feel good love hormone happening for me. And we are, even without words, our nervous systems communicate with each other. And the same thing happens when my 4-year-old is having a tantrum on aisle 5 of the grocery store. His nervous system is melting down. It's usually producing cortisol or adrenaline, and my nervous system starts to produce that in reaction to his. So, first noticing that it's so wildly unrealistic that a child's going to have a tantrum or a meltdown and you're going to feel fine inside. That really what's going to happen is your nervous system's going to react to that meltdown or tantrum. Sometimes your reaction is that your heart starts racing and you start to get amped up. Sometimes you might get dismissive over it and disconnect. And you're like, oh my gosh, it's so dramatic. Like you start to disconnect from it. There are different ways that you might react to that, but inside, you're likely not at a regulated state when that's happening. First and foremost, just acknowledging that and giving yourself the ability to say, oh, this is happening for me too. And as you notice this is happening for me too, then you get to choose, how do I get back to a regulated space? Because it's not a kid's job to get calm for us. It's our job to get calm for them. And if it feels too hard for us to get calm for them, we sure can't expect them to get calm for us. And when we're looking at this, saying like, okay, what can I do to calm myself so that I can actually show up for them? All the while knowing there's not a single day that I have left as a teacher, as a researcher, as a parent, and been like, wow, I was perfect today. I responded intentionally 100% of the time. That's so not the case. You're not going to do this all the time. But when you can notice that and say, okay, for myself, if I can't leave the space, I have to ground my body with some sort of phrase or mantra. I have different mantras for different humans in different scenarios. If we're in the grocery store, my mantra is nobody actually cares about this happening around you, right? Because it feels embarrassing. It feels like I'm supposed to make it stop. And so that's my mantra in the moment when I'm in the grocery store. And I think especially a lot of folks know me where I live and know the work that I do. And I want to be like, yeah, this is also it in real life that like sometimes my kid's melting and I'm slapping the register. But I will squeeze my hands and let them go. I will push my toes into the ground and just count all of my toes hitting the ground. Sometimes I'll look around and just say like, all right, what are 5 green things I can find in this space? And it's really just like grounding my body so that I can come back into regulation and be here. I have to pair it with a mantra because that helps so that I'm not just like grounding. And then I'm like still like, how do I make this stop? What am I supposed to do? And the mantra is really helpful for me in that process. And then I can turn and say, okay, buddy, you really wanted to get that toy. The other day it was a balloon in the grocery store, and we're not allowed to get one today. Man, I'm going to be here with you while we figure this out. And now sometimes I can pause and we can figure this out. Sometimes I have a 1-year-old who's also in the car and now trying to climb out of the car, and I got to move him along, where I'm like, oh man, you know what? I'm going to take a picture of this balloon and we can figure it out later. Like, are we going to put it on the birthday list? He likes to slide under it. He calls it being a turtle when he wants to like hide. And so he'll slide on like the bottom of the cart where I usually put like packs of seltzer or whatever. He'll slide under there and just lay there. And I had an older woman. I was leaving, like an elderly woman at one point was like, there's a kid under your car. I was like, yeah, I know. That's my son. Thank you so much. But it was as if I didn't know he was there. Some kid had just snuck onto the cart. We have to keep moving. We have to get home for lunch or rest time. But really, in that moment of the tantrum or meltdown, I think what's just so key is I think social media parenting tells us this lie that you'll get to this place where like you're not affected by it. And truly, from a neurobiological standpoint, it's just not true. Our nervous systems talk to each other all the time in the same way that if somebody's having an argument and you walk into the room and even if they're not talking, you can just feel that energy in the space. Our nervous systems communicate with each other. So you're not failing if you're also feeling in those moments.
And for the listeners that have not read your book, this is a lot of what it is. How to show up for your tiny humans in a more effective way.
Yeah, so we get nerdy with you. We have the book is the first book, Tiny Humans, Big Emotions, is broken up into 3 parts. And then we have Big Kids, Bigger Feelings, publishing in September of 2025. And that is like 5-year-old to 12-year-old range. But both of them, what we're diving into is the nerdiness of the neuroscience. We have 9 sensory systems. We talk about those. What does that mean? How all of our nervous systems are different and process that stimuli differently. And then with that, like what's coming up for us as the adult? How do we do the adult work alongside this? Now, how do I respond to my kid? It's not one size fits all. We take that nerdiness of the neuroscience, those 9 sensory systems, and bring them into part 2 of I said 2 totally different humans. My 4-year-old, when he's having a hard time, he's a sensory sensitive kid. And so he does not like to be touched. He gets overwhelmed by sound. He is regulated by a sensory break, where like his dream is that he's in a room where nobody's talking to him or touching him or needing anything from him. And it's like dark and quiet. And he also is regulated by vestibular input, which is where you move the plane of your head. So this could be like spinning, swinging, dipping upside down. My daughter, it would climb back inside the womb if she could. There's not enough touch for her. She loves it. She loved to be in a carrier when she was really little, and she would have like naps on my body. That was her jam. She loves like big body play and climbing and wants to do like heavy work. She's like a CrossFit kid, like wants to lift things and carry them. She'll rearrange the furniture. She loves a verbal validation. So if something happens, just last night she was walking by a chair and stubbed her toe, and she started like crying, but not, she was like, and picked up her toe and I was like, oh, did you stub your toe? You bonked it on that chair. That hurts. And for her, that feels really comforting in the moment for me to say what I saw and really validate her experience. For my son, it's more dysregulating. So what he wants is me to say as little as possible and to just be close by, but not touching him and not talking to him. And we only know that because we take the information from part 1, the neuroscience parts, and look at what's a kid sensitive to, what are they seeking, what helps them regulate. And then we bring it into part 2 of, okay, given the unique child in front of you, how do you respond to them in a way that helps them regulate and teaches them about their body? Because it's not one size fits all.
I've been thinking about my son, and for a long time, like you said, they're all different. Every one of my 4 kids has shown up in different ways, but my youngest son, he gets so angry at me when I don't run to him. But you know by the 4th kid that like, okay, they're okay. I don't really need to run. They don't need stitches. And he's, you are not running to me, and it makes me very mad. Why don't you care? If you cared, you would run to me. I'm like, okay, this is good information, but just breaking
Yeah.
it.
Oh, I love that. Also, like, how cool that he feels safe enough in his relationship with you that he can say that he can say, I have this need, and knows that you're not going to be mad at him. You're not going to shame him for it, but that he's safe to share that with you. That's awesome, Kendra.
His dad and I are both therapists, so I think that helps. Learning some of this just like you are. And I love how you broke it down a little bit, talking about that dysregulation, how you both feel that during tantrums, even if my face is not showing it in the grocery store or whatever it is, like feeling that tension in my shoulders, maybe like my jaw is clenched, whatever that might be, creating some sort of mantra, like you said, nobody actually cares about this. And then also moving to those grounding exercises. Like I notice after every session with a client, for example, I will just do this really big like breath and just let it out. Even if it was like a really chill session, it's just like this letting go. And I think we all have to do that in different ways. And you didn't specifically say this, but it sounds like then right afterwards, you often go to this validating part, but grounding yourself first. Am I understanding that right based on some of the things that you shared?
That's exactly right. That so often we try to jump over the us part to just get to the them part because it's uncomfortable for us to be in it. And our nervous system says, make that stop so that we can feel good, right? So that we can get back to feeling calm. This idea that we need somebody else to be regulated in order for us to be regulated. A lot of us learned that. A lot of us experienced that in the way that we were parented or in school systems or how other adults responded to us, where they needed us to be calm, to be quiet, to feel like we were under control. I remember being in 5th grade and Mrs. Conklin, bless Mrs. Conklin, she's doing the best she could with the tools she had. But I was in class and I was chatting with my friend, Jessie Schoonover, and she said, girls, you need to go out in the hall and compose yourselves and then come back in when you're ready. We get out to the hall and I turned to Jessie and I was like, do you know what it means to compose ourselves? She was like, I have no idea what that means. So we're just like standing in the hall. We don't know what we're supposed to be doing. And what we knew though was we're supposed to be quiet and still, right? And we didn't know, are we allowed to ask questions? What are we allowed to do? What she needed. And now looking back and so many more clues about Mrs. Conklin, she's a sensory sensitive human. And for teachers, it's very challenging when you're sensory sensitive because kids come with a lot of stimuli. There's noise in the space, there's a lot of visual stimuli, etc. And a lot of times what we see with sensory sensitive teachers is that they start to look for compliance from kids because nervous system's overwhelmed. So they're like, we need you to stop talking and moving your body so that I don't lose it. And that's what Ms. Conklin was experiencing probably, right? Like she needed us to compose ourselves and come back in and be quiet. And really what we're seeing here is the adult needs to have tools for their own regulation. But so many of us experience things like that, that now I said in Tiny Humans, I wrote, sometimes I open my mouth and my mom comes out and sometimes it's great. Sometimes I absolutely want to pass that thing on. I learned so many great things from my parents. And sometimes I've spent a lot of time, money, and therapy trying to not pass that on. And so, like, then what do we do with those things?
So listeners can go and look at your resources because these are things that we all are trying to improve on, no matter what stage we are in. The first book is Tiny Humans, Big Emotions. And then what about the second book?
Yeah, this one, Tiny Humans, Big Emotions, is birth to like age 6, 7, that early childhood range. And I wrote it with a co-author, Lauren Stauble. She and I both were teaching together. We co-created the collaborative emotion processing method. It's what all of our work is based off of. You learn about that in the book. We researched, we call it the CEPT method across the US. Yes, so then she and I co-authored Tiny Humans. And then Big Kids, Bigger Feelings is that like age 5 to 12-year-old range where we're so often what we were hearing from folks reading this, they were like, oh my God, this is so helpful. And also, what do I do with my older kid? Can you write the Big Kids, Bigger Feelings version? We got that title from everyone who had read Tiny Humans and was asking for it. Like that kept coming up. And we're like, yeah, absolutely. That dives into what does this look like in those elementary years, the middle years. I think we're sold this like myth, if you've walked this, that like the early years are so tough. They're exhausting, they're physical, you're not sleeping, you might be feeding a kid with your body. They need you in so many ways physically. And then teenage years are tough emotionally and boundary pushing and all that. And there's a break. And it's unfortunately not true. Like they still need us just in different ways. And so we kept hearing from people that are like, oh my gosh, my 9-year-old is like a teenager. What is going on? And we're like, yeah, let's break that down. What is going on for, and so that's a lot of what we dive into. Like, what's happening for their nervous system? How are they processing stimuli? What does it look like to move into those middle years where now inclusion and belonging play a really big role in our regulation and feeling of like safety and community? And how do we support that emotionally and all that jazz?
So then, Alyssa, are you going to come back on the show when you have one for those of us that have teenagers?
Sure, but also Lisa Tamora has fantastic books. The Emotional Lives of Teenagers is so good. 10 out of 10 would recommend for anyone with teens that's looking for something. Her
That's good to
resources are
know.
fantastic.
Can you explain a little bit about the 9 senses that you talked about in your book and just break it down for us so we can understand what that's all about?
Totally. I was actually just presenting to a group of parents in New York City, and they have this parent speaker series that this childcare program runs, and they've had incredible humans. And I was supposed to speak for an hour, and I ended up saying, I'll stay as long as you have questions. And I was there for 2.5 hours. We were just diving into this stuff. And I asked the group at the end, so many people were like, this was like transformative. This was life changing for me. So eye opening. And I was like, what felt new about this? I feel like you've been exposed to so many incredible parenting resources. And overwhelmingly, this is what they brought up. These 9 sensory systems, I think, are just something we don't talk enough about. It doesn't matter whether you have kids or not, just being a human, you have a nervous system. And you have these 9 senses. We often hear of those 5: sight, sound, taste, touch, smell. And you might identify with some of them. If you're visually sensitive, you might be someone who like clutter really adds up for you. When you walk into a space and there's a lot of clutter, it feels overwhelming. You're like, oh, I just want to like clean and put this away and have it feel organized so that my brain can feel calm. If you are a sound sensitive person, I have sound sensitivities, and bless him, he's incredible, but I married a drummer. And so there's just so much tapping and clicking happening in my household where it's like at the dinner table and he's like tapping along at the dinner table. And then I want a divorce because my nervous system is so fried. And so when we add the tapping in, I'm like, I cannot, I'm dealing with the sounds of the children plenty. I need you to not be adding tapping to my life right now. And so when we're looking at those, we have those 5. We have 4 more and we often leave off the table. We have our interoceptive system. This is where my like hangry people for this one, like people who, when they're a little hungry, they're hangry. When they're a little tired, they're exhausted. These folks are pretty good at noticing when their heart is beating fast or they're starting to get clammy. Those early cues. In kids, this can show up where they're like typically pretty easy to potty train because they notice those signs like, oh, I have to go to the bathroom really early on to that process instead of I have one child who is interoceptive sensitive where they like really notice these, and one child who will be peeing before they're like, I have to go to the bathroom. And they just don't have that same level of sensitivity and awareness. People who are vestibular sensitive might get motion sickness, whereas people who are vestibular seeking could be on a swing forever and it feels so good. Our proprioceptive sense lets us know where our body ends and something else begins. So kids who have low proprioceptive awareness, they will often be kind of like a bull in a china shop where they're going from point A to point B and they're plowing through all the things and people and stuff in their way, not because they don't care, but because they don't see it. They're not sure where their body ends and something else begins. They will often push too hard, hug too tight. They go to sit next to somebody, they sit on them, or they're still learning, like, where do I end? Kids who have high awareness usually have a pretty big space bubble where they're like, yep, you're close enough. And they're also pretty good at like bobbing and weaving between things. I think of like a dog show where you see them like bobbing between the cones. And a human with high awareness could do that with a lot of excellence. You get input through heavy work, through big body play, the jumping, the climbing, the lifting heavy things. Lets your muscles and joints, it kind of turns them on and says, like, all right, here we are. And then we have our neuroceptive sense. Neuroception keeps us safe in the world. It's scanning our environment to say, ooh, am I safe? I call neuroceptive sensitive humans our spidey sense people, where they like have those spidey senses where they come in and they're like, ooh, I can feel the energy of the room. Something's off here. Your neuroceptive sense might be heightened in spaces where you've experienced any trauma. And now your brain says, ooh, I have to be like on high alert here. I'm working right now with a school district that has high ACEs, a lot of kids who have incarcerated parents, some experiencing homelessness, living with grandparents, etc. And a lot of the kids in the school system, what we're focused on first and foremost is just how do we help them feel safe in their body and in their environment? And that's all your neuroceptive sense. And it's really good at keeping you safe. And so when we look at these 9 senses, all of us are sensitive to some, like me with sound, and seeking others for regulation. That's me for proprioceptive input. I could have a massage for 4 days and I'm like, I want more. Like it's so regulating for me. We can see within this that we'll have sometimes a sensory mismatch. My son and I are a sensory mismatch. He and my husband are a sensory match. When he's having a hard time, what I want when I'm having a hard time is like my daughter. I want somebody to talk to me and validate my experience and hug me and touch me and be close to me. And that's my son's nightmare. Can you please stop talking and touching me? I want to give him a hug. And I have to be super mindful of this, overriding what feels instinctual for me to show up for what's actually beneficial for him. And what that looks like for him is a sensory break. It's a break in stimuli. It's me not talking, not touching him, reducing any background noise if I can, making sure there's spaces in our environment where he can go hide. We were at a birthday party 2 weeks ago and he went into our friend's bedroom and just took a break by himself. And at this point, he knows how to do that on his own because we scaffolded it over and over for so long, where we would take the break with him. And now he knows what it looks like to ask for that or to go do that. When we're looking at these 9 sensory systems, we can't do any of the work around like emotion processing or regulation until we understand this, because how I regulate is different than how my son and my husband regulate. It's not one size fits all. And we were looking for a resource we could send people to that would help you understand, what does this look like for me? So what am I sensitive to? What am I seeking? What does this look like for my child? And couldn't find something without individually, privately working with an occupational therapist who has integrative training for integrative sensory system. And they are few and far between, and it's expensive and not accessible. And so we worked with a group of OTs who have this training, and we put together a regulation questionnaire that can give you an idea. You can take it as many times as you want. You can take it for any age group, and it will show you where might that person be sensitive, how sensitive, where might they be seeking on that spectrum, how much are they seeking that? Is it something where they need to have a fidget available? Or on the other end of that spectrum, are they going to be really aware of how clothes feel, that they're too tight, they're too itchy, they're too something all the time? And we break down those 9 sensory systems and provide you with, how do you make sense of that? What does that mean? And it's totally free to take. There's a paid version if people want that, but you can get all of what I just named for free at seedquiz.com. And it's available starting in April.
It's interesting that you say that, because as you're talking, I'm like, oh, this would be so beneficial in a quiz, because the websites I go to a lot for my clients are often like a quiz or questionnaire. I love that you're doing that and that they can check that out at seedquiz.com. We'll put that in the show notes as well. And something that I haven't even overly thought about in this way. Yeah, of course, every child is different, and not knowing what those 9 senses are, or which one you are more like or your child is more like, and matching that, being able to understand that and then read your book and get more guidance on what to do about that. That sounds amazing, especially now that you have 2 books. So from birth to 12 between the 2 of them. And then, like I said, coming soon is your teenage one. Even if you're not going to do it, I'm just going to pretend that you are.
Appreciate you. My family would love it if I took a pause on producing books for a minute. I was 32 weeks pregnant with Mila when Tiny Humans published. It's been a wild ride. Yeah, and also from the place of books, like, you don't have to buy it. You can go to the library and ask them to carry it. You can snag it from the library's audiobook system if you're an audiobook listener. You can pop into a parents group on Facebook or online and see if anyone has it that you can borrow. Whatever's most accessible for you, do that.
Yeah. Thank you so much for coming on the show and breaking this down for us a little bit, helping us understand how we can take our parenting to the next level and really find greater peace as we're doing this, instead of navigating these things blind. So I really appreciate you coming on. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you so much for having me.
Of course. And where can we find you?
Yeah, at seedandsow.org. It's like our mothership, SEW. For families, we have family resources on there. We have a full professional development program for schools. We work with childcare programs, family childcare providers, elementary school based systems, and middle schools. All that is on the website at seed.and.so, SEW on Instagram. I hang out a lot. We have a podcast, Voices of Your Village, with episodes that drop every Thursday.
We'll put all of that in the show notes then. And we loved having you give us a little more hope that maybe we can manage these tantrums and different things a little bit better. So again, appreciate you coming on.
Thank you so much for listening. As a reminder, please head over to our website to see our courses, as well as take a few minutes to leave us a review so that way we can help spread more of those positive ripples. Have a wonderful day, and we will see you back here every Monday and Thursday.